Do you know what rate your music, AOTY or Fantano core is? Has your music taste ever been made fun of for falling into any of these categories? Have you ever made fun of anybody for falling into these categories? If you answered yes to any of these questions, I'm sorry. It's likely that you've been called pretentious, or that some of your favorite artists have been called pretentious online or maybe even offline before. But what exactly does that mean? How can you tell if you're pretentious about music? Pretentious. Attempting to impress by affecting greater importance or merit than is actually possessed. This is the dictionary definition of pretentious according to Oxford Languages. You often see this term used and greatly misused when critiquing art. But how can we apply this to music snobbery? Now, before I get into any of these traits, isn't it so interesting that a lot of these self-proclaimed pretentious music nerds use the word pretentious like it's a reclaimed insult of sorts? I think it says a lot about the self-deprecation that a lot of these online music nerd spaces participate in. Anyways, here's some traits that I think make up the pretentious music nerd. A fixed belief in objectivity in music. One of the main pillars of pretentious music nerd snobbery is a fixed belief in good and bad music. Good music is music that is layered and refined. They often fall into experimental categories such as experimental hip-hop or post-rock and have overarching concepts behind the music. Bad music is simple, slop. It is mass market, unchallenging, and made to appeal to as many people as possible. This way of thinking mirrors elitist views on high versus low art. It is trying to objectify an abstract concept, quality. If you were to describe artwork as high art now, you would likely get laughed at. However, the people that buy into this mindset of good music have different motives. They make having more refined music taste than the average person a large factor of their personality. This isn't exclusive to music. Pretentious film bros and, again, art dudes act very similarly. You may also see people like this complaining about how music now is worse than it used to be. Oh, hot take. Mainstream pop, bad. Older people may complain about how electronic music isn't real music because it does not use instruments. They'll cite the amount of skill required in making music as an indicator of how good the artist can be or how good the music itself is. As a result, they'll devalue a lot of music because it sounds like it barely took any effort or it being too accessible. They see music as a means of only spreading a message rather than a means of self-expression. Now, deep music that you can return to again and again and dissect is great, but it isn't the only type of music that should exist. Simple music has its place. Back to my earlier art metaphor, it's like people who cry about abstract art and how art back then used to take real skill and effort. Where are the realistic artists? This type of mindset stifles art and, in this case, music in the long run. Number 2, being elitist over certain artists. This goes hand in hand with the first point. Of course, if you believe in good and bad music, you're going to be a lot more elitist over the artists you think confined to your definition of good music. However, if you think that only a certain artist is the best at the genre they're in and refuse to take alternative opinions, you shut down discourse and reinforce the very flawed idea of a best endgame artist. People who are like this often talk down on those who have different opinions than them. How could you say this artist is better when my favorite artist is an objectively better songwriter? People like artists for different reasons. These elitists also tend to be extremely gatekeepy. Non-fans may get accused of just not getting it if they don't like their artist's music. It is fans like these that lead to resentment towards certain artists. Outsiders will look at these bad apples and think to themselves, wow, this artist must be pretentious too, right? Number 3, obsession over taste curation. Pretentious music nerds are more into the performance of good music taste rather than the actual music itself. These people are obsessed with anything that can track what they listen to. Stats FM, Last FM, earbuds. You'll see people like these collect CDs and vinyls, take photos with them but not even listen to them, and in quite a few cases not even have a player. Physical media is great, but leaving it to just sit there, gather dust, and walk is not. There is nothing wrong with using Last.fm or any other music tracking services, but it is when you become obsessive over it that becomes problematic. Back when I used to be more active in music communities, I would often see people flaunting the amount of streaks that they have for an artist, basically how many times they've played an artist's songs in a row, or how many plays of an artist they have. Why are you gamifying listening to music? So those are some of my defining traits of the pretentious music nerd. But what causes somebody to become like that? A lot of music nerds are terminally online. I would know that especially because I used to be one of them. In fact, a lot of what I'm saying here comes from personal experience. More on that later though. What drives a lot of people to the internet, especially those who lurk in these more enthusiast spaces, is isolation. Ironically, it can become a self-fulfilling cycle as spending more time online can lead to further separation from other people. I remember back when I fell into this pretentious music nerd mindset that I had engaged in spaces that would further feed into it. I would go on Topsters and constantly see people saying, expand your taste, or berating albums or whole Topsters for being rate your music core, which had led me to 2 conclusions. Number 1, I need to constantly improve my music taste so I can have a good Topster and so I can have a taste that is both diverse while not being rate your music core as these people proclaimed. Number 2, there are levels into liking music. Both really bad beliefs. After a while, I found myself telling people to expand their taste and making fun of those for having basic taste as well. It was a terrible cycle. And ironically, my favorite album at the time was so mainstream that it didn't even fall into a radio music core category. It often got ragged on for being pretentious due to being extremely ambitious, and also due to things that said artists had said about it. However, I proclaimed liking it as an exception to my regular taste and constantly made jokes about how the rest of the albums I liked perfectly fit into my pretentious music nerd taste. I believe that all of that was influenced by the internet's ability to nowadays only speak in post-ironic tongues. It's why I almost admire those who are fans of loathed artists like AJR. Seriously, they fully understand that basically the whole internet hates on their favorite artists and they choose to still love them regardless. It's awesome. The anti-pretentious, pretentious nerd. Wordy header, I know, but this is a subcategory of the pretentious music nerd which I do not see talked about. But being actively anti-pretentious loops back to just being pretentious. I don't like anything from critically acclaimed genre. It's overrated. People like these often appear to be contrarians, deliberately opposing the popular opinion for attention. Or translation, rage baiters. However, I don't think they're just trying to be different. I think they are rightfully upset over the current state of online music discourse, but choose to express it by being bitter instead. These people aren't that common though. A lot of people who find themselves frustrated with music discourse often just shy away from it, or maybe just make critical videos on it. However, these people often call music discourse as a whole unimportant and spew anti-art takes. Why are we discussing music? Just listen to it! They have a similar superiority complex to the music elitist, however express it by just shutting down discourse instead. They sound well-meaning at first but quickly become grating. Alright, so all this talk about music taste pretentiousness and how it's inherently bad, but how do you unlearn music taste pretentiousness? Here are a few steps that you can take to unlearn music taste pretentiousness. They are not in order. Choose to do whatever steps you want, but I hope they can be helpful. Number 1, talk to people about music that you may not necessarily like. From personal experience, the people around you likely don't have super refined music taste. Refined in big air quotes. A lot of people around me listen to artists that I don't necessarily care about. However, it is still extremely interesting to exchange different perspectives. Joining music clubs in real life, in college, helped me find people who are similarly passionate about music with vastly different music tastes. I actually found one of my good friends there. Number 2, if you don't have that opportunity, try creating stuff. It doesn't have to be music related. Write something about your favorite song. Draw something. Really connecting with the music you love is a good way to reduce a complex around music. You learn to focus less on how people are perceiving your music taste and more about the personal connections you have with your own music. One of the things that had helped me get unstuck from these pretentious echo chambers is writing my own analysis pieces on music, not being afraid to talk about how certain lyrics from an album really resonated with things that had gone on in my own life, regardless of whether they may have been stretches or just self-projection or not. And now you actually can start discussions about how the music has personally impacted you. Sometimes though, if you are analyzing music, people may perceive you as pretentious because, oh, but I don't think the artist was thinking of all that when they wrote that song. But just don't listen to them. Number 3, leave spaces that focus on making fun of people's music tastes. Whether it's a server you're in, whether it's a community you're in, or a YouTuber you watch that likes making fun of and tearing down people for what they listen to. It should have been common sense for me back then, but for some reason it wasn't. It does not matter if it is an in-joke that everybody is in. It is still corny. Number 4, don't force yourself to like things. This may be the most important out of all the things I've listed. If you listen to a critically acclaimed album and you didn't like it, do not force yourself to change your opinion. This does not mean shouting about how you hate it all day without giving it a fair chance. But if you don't feel like re-listening to it, or if after you listen to it and try to give it another chance that it still isn't hitting for you, that's okay. Forcing yourself to like things because you're seen as unanimously good can lead to resentment or you being inauthentic. For example, people who say, "Oh, I love To Pimp a Butterfly" by Kendrick Lamar, but I never return to it because it has no replay value. What kind of bullshit is that? Continuing to force yourself to like music that you don't actually like is a surefire way to fall into this pretentious music nerd trap. The key to not being pretentious is sincerity and open-mindedness. Don't pretend to be more knowledgeable about music than you actually are. Take a backseat from communities that make you feel worse about yourself and your music taste. Try understanding another person's perspective on music. Focus on your favorite music rather than how others think about it.